Movies in short here. Today, we'll run through the plot outline of the 1991 cult classic, Samurai Cop, starring Tom Carrados's wig and Mark Fraser's one-liners.
Why did you come under?
I'm an undercover cop.
Sit back, relax and enjoy. The movie opens with members of the Katana Gang. Okamura, Yamashita and female henchwoman discussing the future of their operation. Okamura suggests that they should join forces with the other gangs to take over LA, and that even Al Capone, who died 44 years before this film was made, wants in. Their boss Fujiyama doesn't like to share and orders the men to wipe out a rival Chinese gang. We are lucky enough to see the super secret katana handshake and they set off. Meanwhile, our hero, Joe Marshall, the samurai cop, is brought in from San Diego to assist with a cocaine bust and meets his new partner, Frank. They spot the katana perps and tail them, with assistance from Eyes in the Sky, Peggy. Joe radios her and tells her to keep an eye out for a boat in the marina that will deliver the cocaine. She tells Joe to keep it up. He says,
Oh, it's up and ready. You just keep it warm.
He has just arrived in LA but is already killing it with the ladies. The gangsters get to the boat and collect the packages. Joe and Frank use advanced stealth surveillance techniques to observe the perps who are now somehow in the desert, loading the cases into their van. They're back in the marina again and speed off. Joe's wig is too powerful and he quickly corners them, forcing them to take evasive action. The gangsters have no chance of shaking Joe so decide to open fire. Frank is a crack shot and quickly dispatches the katana member, much to Joe's delight. The next gangster opens fire and Joe shows us an ancient samurai bullet dodging technique. Frank's eye is even sharper than his wit and he makes short work of the gunman. We can see the concentration on Joe's face as they continue their high-speed pursuit. Frank lands a hit on the driver and, like every good movie, the vehicle has a minor accident and explodes. We hear horrific screams from the burning stuntman while Joe and Frank extinguish the flames but his mouth isn't even moving. Peggy congratulates them and says this calls for a celebration. Joe vows to see her back at her place. A samurai never lies and Joe and Peggy begin to reproduce. Over at Katana HQ, Fujiyama is not pleased to hear that their drug deal went south and asks Yamashita to tell him everything he knows about the samurai cop. Yamashita says that Joe speaks fluent Japanese, and that he got his martial arts training from the masters in Japan. Fujiyama orders Yamashita to bring him the head of the burnt driver who was captured by the police and put it on his piano. No katana member gets captured alive or talks. At Police HQ, Joe's long flowing locks and mahogany tan make him irresistible to all early 90s women. Joe and Frank head to the hospital to check on the burnt man. The nurse on duty says his lips are burned so he won't be able to answer any questions for a few weeks. She notices Joe's hair and cannot control her urges, immediately asking him if he would like to reproduce with her. Joe says bingo through her stethoscope, but she asks to inspect his package first. She asks if Joe was circumcised, because it seems like the doctor chopped off too much. Joe assures her that it is big, but she wants bigger. Frank jumps in and tries to peddle his wares, but his moment's too late. They order Officer Steve to not let anyone into the burnt man's room except doctors and nurses. Female henchwoman disguises herself as a nurse and easily makes it past the hawk-eyed Steve. She reveals that Yamashita is hiding in her cart, and he gracefully rises with sawn-off katana in hand. He tests the blade's sharpness, because a true samurai must always administer clean cuts. Yamashita decapitates the burnt man and takes his head as a gift for Fujiyama. Then uses crouch. Female henchwoman has incredibly strong wrists and easily manages to push the big man to the elevator. He makes sure that his hair is at least comparable to Joe's. Back at Police HQ, Joe and Frank are being reprimanded by Captain Romer, because of all the collateral damage they caused. It is hard to tell if Joe is remorseful. Smooth-talking Frank tries to defuse the situation but the captain says,
I feel like somebody stuck a big club up my ass, and it hurts. I've got to figure out a way to get it out of there.
Frank gets a devilish glint in his eye, and kisses the enraged captain on the head, then runs away. The captain is furious but eventually relinquishes his tough guy act and shows that he has a sense of humor when nobody's looking. The Force are lucky to have someone as fluent in Japanese as Joe is on their side.
What does katana mean?
It means Japanese sword.
We cut to Fujiyama and his gang lunching with Jennifer at her restaurant, the Blue Lagoon. Frank and Joe arrive. Joe's fluent Japanese comes in handy again when he manages to nail the difficult to pronounce Fujiyama on his first try.
Are you Fujiyama?
Joe asks if Fujiyama is the head of the shit katana gang, causing his samurai rival to prepare himself for war. Joe tells Fujiyama that America isn't a place for death merchants to distribute drugs to make their precious millions that they deposit into secret Swiss bank accounts. He promises to put his stinking body into a garbage bag and ship it back to Japan for fertilizer. He asks Jennifer what she is doing with a geek like Fujiyama. His hair already has her in a love trance. Frank cracks himself up and they leave. Yamashita is not going to let them escape that easily and sends out some katana goons. Joe's martial arts prowess is unrivaled, but he struggles to use Western handcuffs. A gangster fetches his trusty katana out of his truck. Joe is confident in his skills and prepares to take him on unarmed, but Frank, unaware of the code of the samurai, shoots him. Yamashita opens fire, killing all of his own men and pinning down Frank and Joe, who are forced to retreat. Yamashita uses a samurai grenade to blow up Frank's ride, then walks off and leaves Joe and Frank, who are standing 2 cars away. We cut to police HQ, where Fujiyama's lawyer is threatening Captain Romer regarding Joe and Frank's conduct at the restaurant. The captain is an unstoppable force and tells the lawyer to get the hell out of his office and get a job, or else he will need surgery to remove Romer's foot from his ass. Joe visits Jennifer and asks her about her connection to Fujiyama. She tells him that when her father died, he left Jennifer and her mother buried under $400,000 of debt. Mr. Fujiyama bailed them out. Joe turns on the charm and asks Jennifer out on a date. It seems his Samson-esque follicles have no effect this time and she plays hard to get. Joe discovers that it is her birthday on Sunday and he invites himself to celebrate it with her. When he leaves the restaurant, he is jumped by katana goons who have been ordered to break both his legs. The katana gang champion thinks he is what it takes to best Joe in single combat, but is quickly felled by a forbidden samurai technique. Joe relieves him of his Western samurai sword and delivers a masterful strike. The final goon flees in terror, but Joe's mere presence makes him fall to the ground. Once in Joe's iron grip, there is no escape. He discovers that the men were sent by Okamura and asks for his address. Outside Okamura's residence, Joe brings us up to speed.
If Okamura is here, then we'll arrest him. On the other hand, if it's the wrong house, then we'll apologize to the owner.
Standard police procedure. Peggy is bored and suggests to her fellow officer that they reproduce to pass the time, but he is having none of it. Okamura is busy reproducing, and Joe notes that this will be the last time he ever gets to. Frank suggests they let him finish, but Joe is a busy man. Joe struggles to open Western doors, giving Okamura time to escape. They finally corner him and we're in for one hell of a mini-boss fight. Okamura adopts his stance and looks to be a formidable opponent. Joe's stance is equally as impressive. Violating fundamental laws of space and time, we teleport to a mountaintop. Okamura goes on the attack, using another forbidden technique. The wig grab, which takes a heavy toll on Joe's confidence. The combatants are evenly matched and trade blows, but Joe's steel jaw is impervious to damage. Okamura uses an advanced grapple but is tossed aside. He retaliates with a dastardly head crusher grip, further damaging Joe's wig and self-esteem. It looks like Joe is in big trouble when Okamura reaches for his concealed blades and unleashes the deadliest of all martial arts styles, the Furious Kitten. Fortunately, Joe's hands are registered weapons and he instantly disarms Okamura and gets him in a head twisty to wristy twisty. Joe brings his prey to Frank to cuff, but he grabs his firearm and tries to take revenge on Joe. Joe is not only the sharpest sword in the East, but the fastest gun in the West, so it's all over for Okamura. We cut to Joe stalking Jennifer, who has just left church, and he hits her with his smoothest, "Hi there." Joe is smart and learned that his hair alone is not enough for a pedigreed lady like Jennifer. She respects his drip and eventually agrees to go back to his place. Joe is putting in serious work and whips Jennifer up a decent meal and plies her with alcohol. He tells Jennifer a romantic story of how he jumped over the fence and slayed one of the neighbor's chickens to cook it for her because he really wanted to impress her. Jennifer asks Joe how he knew she would come home with him. Joe is on a roll and responds, "Let's just say, I can read eyes." Joe is also a master at stretching his cop salary and they go for a stroll outside his beach mansion. The rent must be why he can't afford any chicken. It looks like all his hard work is paying off. Meanwhile, when Frank steps out of the shower, he finds katana thugs have broken into his apartment. They want information on Joe. One of the goons holds a knife to Frank's package and threatens to relieve him of his gift. Fortunately, Frank is into scrapbooking and has a pair of scissors nearby, disposing of the henchman. He tries to phone Joe, but he is too busy with official police business to answer. The bronze god brings Jennifer a birthday cake and they begin to reproduce. Joe finally answers the phone and Frank tells him that katana are after him. Yamashita and the boys are already outside Joe's place, but Joe gets the drop on one and the goon meets a realistic end. Joe's beach mansion is somehow now a house in the suburbs, and they manage to escape. At police HQ, The captain tells them that he is about to be fired because of Joe and Frank's ineptitude. The captain, as Chad as ever, says he couldn't care less if he loses his pension, he just wants Frank and Joe to wipe out Katana. Frank and Joe storm Katana HQ, mowing down endless waves of goons. Joe runs into some trouble with a particular henchman, but he really hates old CRT TVs, so Joe capitalizes on this opportunity to kill him. They finally make it to Fujiyama, who is holding Jennifer hostage. Joe urges Frank to drop his weapon. Fujiyama shoots Frank and aims at Joe, telling him to say sayonara. Frank is wearing a bulletproof vest, so wastes Fujiyama. Jennifer wants to go home and smash, but Joe and Frank still have to deal with Yamashita. They infiltrate Yamashita's stronghold and find a wandering samurai. Joe wishes to take him on in single combat, but Frank is a samurai code cock blocker and interferes again. Yamashita can sense his opponent is near and prepares to engage in glorious combat. He challenges Joe to a duel. Joe represents his dojo and makes his master proud with a dazzling display of swordsmanship. Not to be outdone, Yamashita shows us his dojo's elegant swirly slash. Frank has no idea who the victor will be in this tense battle but refrains from shooting anyone this time. Joe is really getting warmed up now and they clash swords. Yamashita gets Joe on the ropes and uses his signature wristy twisty against him, forcing him to drop his blade. Joe counters with a double knee and disarms Yamashita. Joe's wig becomes unrulier as his power grows. Now it's time for the real wristy twisty. As we've learned from previous battles, there's no escaping this move. Joe is enjoying this too much though and lets Yamashita retrieve his sword. They lock swords, again. Yamashita shows he is a worthy adversary by blocking Joe's high-speed attacks. Yamashita uses his dojo's ultimate swirly technique and they both lose their swords. Few men have lived to see this move. Joe uses his samurai inverted palm elbow choke and Yamashita knows he is done for. Yamashita wishes to die like a true samurai and stay true to Bushido, asking Joe to behead him. Joe sets his jaw and prepares to take a swing but Frank stops him, even though Frank shot everyone Joe wanted to fight before. Yamashita refuses to exist 1 second longer as he is bringing shame to his dojo and commits seppuku. Joe returns to his beachside manor and begins to reproduce with Jennifer. Gentle waves lap against the shore as this masterpiece finally draws to a close. If you'd like to see Joe's wig again in the 2015 sequel, Samurai Cop 2, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thanks and see you again soon.